Thank you, Marilyn. And I am now making a conscious choice to add a slide to my talks, making my own land acknowledgement. I'm still learning. I'm still teachable, and I still need to learn how to properly pronounce the names. So I will not massacre them as I did last week, but rather take a breath and give thanks for the land that I am sitting on and that I am but a settler here. So let me get, so this week we're going to continue our journey of the stone. I brought my stone in from the garden. This is my stone. As you can see, it fits nicely in my palm. It has enough weight to it that I'm aware it's there. I'm not going to just, forget about it and open my hand and drop it on my foot. It probably doesn't pick up, but it's actually got some beautiful lines in it. It kind of reminds me of drifting snow, how it gets kind of the layers to it. And so that was one of the things that attracted it to me when I went out stone hunting for this book. So this week we're going to continue the series, and we're going to look at what the second part of the book talks about, which is the four-step path to, or the fourfold path to forgiveness. And I'd like to give just a quick review in case you weren't here last week or you haven't yet watched the YouTube channel, just so you've got a foundation for the main part of my talk. So one of the things the Tutus talk about is how we have the revenge cycle, and that seems to be our default. We get hurt, or we have harm, or we experience loss, which causes pain. And then we have a choice whether we want to harm or heal. And for many people, the default is choosing to harm. And as you can see, it becomes a circle. It's a closed loop that just continues to feed back on itself. If, however, you make the choice, the brave choice, in my opinion, to heal, then we get into the forgiveness cycle, the fourfold path. So the first step of the fourfold path is telling the story, then naming the hurt, granting forgiveness, and renewing or releasing the relationship, and then continuing on. Notice this is not a closed circle. This is a line. It doesn't have to be a straight line. You may find that you have to loop back. As I talked about last week, you may find you have some metaphysical dust bunnies that you thought you had cleared out of your life, and yet you have something triggers you and you realize that you have not finished the forgiveness work around a particular situation, person, event, whatever. So this is something that we work with. This is my fourth time through the book, and I'm still finding dust bunnies. I'm still finding things I forgot happened that hurt me years ago that I had stuffed down so well and camouflaged so well that, yes, I forgot about them, but my heart and my body did not. And if you find yourself reacting with your body and not wondering what's going on here, that's usually a sign that you've chosen to forget something, and that it does need healing, and it does need to be carefully and lovingly looked at. So what we talked about last week, continuing on here, what forgiveness is not, it's not weakness. That seems to be something, that our culture really, looks at as being something weak, that you can forgive someone. I'll never forgive you, I'll never forget. Well, guess who you're hurting? You're hurting yourself, because you're the one carrying the baggage. It's not about injustice. It's not about condoning someone's actions. It's about releasing the harm that was done to you and finding ways as part of the restorative justice model of healing that part. It's not easy, it's not quick, and it's not about forgetting. So this is where we're going to start from. So as I said at the beginning, we have the four states. So I've put in here actual examples from the book. This is just a scan out of the book. And my stone isn't quite a circle, but it makes for an interesting pattern when I do trace it. So one of the first things or the last things we talked about at last week was about what is our resistance? What's holding us back? For me, the biggest one is I don't want to feel the pain. I'll be quite honest. I mean, it's quite nice. I've got it stuffed down there. It's camouflaged. I can't see it. It's not in my face every day. And yet I know it's a burden. And yet I know it's holding me back. And yet I'm carrying something that I don't need to carry any longer. It served its time. It served a purpose, whether it gave me a gift, a blessing, or a lesson, and it's time to move on. So let's work through these 4 steps together. So the first step is telling the story. And I'm just going to quote directly from the book because why not? So how do we tell the story? We speak the truth. Now, I know truth is a hot button right now for a lot of people. As I've probably mentioned before, I have family in the States. Some are Republicans, some are Democrats. What constitutes truth is a really interesting debate in my family right now. But let's start with the facts. That's the whole thing, is what are the facts? For me, this kind of work involves my getting away from the emotion, just temporarily, just telling my heart, just go have a chill, go have a little nap, go rest, whatever. And just teasing out the facts. It may be that I'm remembering this differently than how I experienced it. As you are able, tell your story first to a friend, loved one, or trusted person. Consider telling the story to the person who harmed you or writing a letter, which you can mail or not, and accept that whatever happened cannot be changed or undone. And that can be so hard to accept, that you can't go back and change it. What you can change going forward is your understanding of it, your feelings around it, and your thinking around it. And I think what's really important in this step is being willing to look at it. You know, the 12 steps, which I'm familiar with but have not been a part of, but the idea that it is an honest, deep look into yourself, that you do it with integrity. And the Tutus are very clear on this, that as you tell the story, only tell it to people with whom it will be safe. You don't need to blab it all over Facebook or Instagram or whatever. You don't need to make a TikTok video out of it, but rather the idea that there is someone who can gently and lovingly hold your story with you and just carefully and lovingly hold that mirror to you as you tell the story, and not interrupt and not tell you what to do, but just to allow you that blessing of being able to speak your truth, to speak the facts of the situation, to speak what it is that has hurt you and has caused harm and has caused you pain. And the Tutus are very cautious also to warn us, you know, only talk to someone else when it is safe to do so. If it is a person who harmed you in the past, it may not be appropriate for you to reopen that relationship if you've cut it off. It may not be possible for you to talk to that person because they are no longer on this plane, or you've lost track of them. I know for myself, I shared that I'd had a traumatic experience a few years back. I do not want to renew relationships with that person. That person and I were so different that there really isn't anything. What brought us together was that we had to work together. And now that neither of us are in that workplace, there's not a lot that would bring us together. That said, I can still behold the Christ in her. I can still thank her through the ethers, through my thoughts, through my prayers, for the part that she played in getting me out of a toxic job and into doing something I love, speaking and teaching. If I meet her, I will be willing to shake her hand. If I never meet her again, I am at peace with that. I hold no ill will against her now because I have done my work around that situation. And there were tears, and there were days I didn't want to do the work. And there were days that I just said, God, this is too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And the thought came back to me, why are you wanting to carry it any further than you have to? So I told my story. What's recommended in the book is that you whisper it to the stone. I mean, the stone can't get on Facebook. The stone can't tell anybody. The stone can feel and be comfortable. That's why I love this stone. It fits so beautifully in one hand or in two hands. And I can just hold it like this and just whisper to it and say to it, you know what? That situation was really crummy. That situation really hurt. And just allowing those words to come out of my mouth, allowing my heart to feel that energy, allowing my head to process those memories, truly is a blessing and allows that pain and hurt to come out. And I always find, even if it's just a little situation, even if it's just a little 5-minute talk with my little stone here, I feel better. There's something that is released that calms and that heals that portion. So coming back to our model, the next step is naming the hurt. Again, going back to the book. Identify the feelings within the facts. That can be a difficult one. For myself, I won't presume what your upbringing was like. My grandparents and beyond were very stiff-lipped, don't show emotions. I don't think I ever saw my grandmother cry, even the day of my grandfather's funeral. I don't remember ever seeing my great-grandmother cry. So it was something you only showed positive emotions. You know, you were very pleasant to be around, you know, no anger, no sadness. And yet that's what comes up as we're working through these hurts. And part of it for me is I don't have a good vocabulary around emotions. That's something I've had to learn as an adult, that I didn't come out of childhood with a good understanding of. Remember, no feeling is wrong, bad, or invalid. Well, that can be a trigger for some folks, but I invite you to just sit with that and give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling. If you're feeling it, there's a reason. If you're feeling it, it's because that's what's happening within you, even if you can't articulate it. Recognize the stages of grief and honor wherever you fall in the process. I have a little difficulty with the 5 stages of grief, because we're taught that it's like a linear thing. And my experience is it squiggles and moves around. And just when you think you're starting to find your equilibrium again, something triggers and you're finding yourself back at the bottom of the mountain and working your way through those things again. But it's okay. Find someone who will acknowledge you and listen to your feelings without trying to fix them. That can be a hard one. You know, it's so difficult. Guilty. And I'm so grateful for Unity and the prayer chaplain program, because that was what taught me how to listen. That was what taught me to be comfortable in the silence and to allow that space of silence to be with someone else as I'm listening to them, to be comfortable, to just wait for someone to find the words, to find the emotion, to feel safe in expressing that feeling or that hurt or whatever it is, to be okay with tears, to be okay with someone saying, what the bluff is God wanting from me now? And just to be in that space. Being in that space with another as the listener is probably the greatest gift you can give another person. Accept your own vulnerability. Wow. That's not something we like to do. That's not something we want to acknowledge, that we can be vulnerable. But we do that as a blessing to ourselves, as a way of encouraging ourselves to say, this is who I am in this exact moment. I have changed and I will continue to change. Right now, I'm feeling very much like I'm in a chrysalis. And from what I understand, it gets really gooey and messy and amazing at the same time. And that's where I'm at. And it's fine. I'm neither caterpillar nor butterfly. Somewhere in the middle there, sorting things out. You know, as we come back out of these lockdowns, as we come out of this normal that we've had for almost 3 years, into something new. And we're not quite sure what it looks like. We're not quite sure how we're going to interact with each other. And that's okay. As we work through this, we accept that some things are vulnerable And sometimes we're just plain not perfect. I've said it before, I will say it to the day I pass from this existence. If I were perfect, I would not be at this human form. I would be a being of light. I would be like a dot of light. And that would be how I would travel around. And finally, move forward when you are ready. I emphasize that last word because society wants us to be healed. Society wants us to not have these messy emotions. Society doesn't want us to be in grief or anger. They want us to be, calm and pleasant to be around. And I've really learned that as I've gone through and processed the loss of my husband. I have folks who are saying, so when are you starting to date? It's been 2 years. Really? No, thank you, but no. Not ready, not sure I'll ever be ready for that step. So how do we allow ourselves and give ourselves permission to push back against that societal norm and say, I'm not ready to move on to the next step? Thank you for asking. Thank you for caring. But my life, my choice, my path. Our step with the stone ritual. This one was a real, wow, I did some serious work with this. Take your stone in your dominant hand. I usually carry it around in my left hand because I like doing that. Dominant hand. So as you name your hurt, clench that stone. I don't know if you can see because I don't have enough light, but my knuckles are starting to go white with the clench that I'm. And as you open your hand and your fist, release that hurt. And breathe through it. And then if something comes up, clench it again. Allow that intensity of the emotion to go into the stone, into your hand, through your hand, into the stone. And release. And allow that energy to just flow from your hand back into the universe. And acknowledge and give thanks that you have released that hurt. And now we go into granting forgiveness. And the Tutus have a great definition of what forgiveness is. It's recognizing shared humanity. It is moving back into the oneness out of the otherness. And here they write, forgiveness is a choice. I love the analogy that I can choose to carry all this baggage around, or I can choose to forgive. We grow through forgiveness and forgiving. We grow as we understand and are able to release the hurts. Forgiving is how we move from victim to hero in our story. Notice it's our story. It's not everybody's story. I remember early on, being really into forgiveness and forgiveness work and thinking that was my panacea for everything. And I went to someone to ask for their forgiveness for something I did. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads because they'd already forgotten about it. And I managed to trigger back that situation that they weren't working on. It was very awkward. So I didn't do that again unless I was aware that that was mine to do. I draw from our co-founder, Charles Fillmore. He always said, go to God first and thereafter as God directs. So if God, if I get that feeling I really need to apologize to someone, I will. If I check in and it says, you know what, this is your work, not theirs, I don't, because I recognize that I don't want to do harm to another. We know we are healing when we are able to tell a new story. So my new story about the trauma is I had this wonderful opportunity where I got to leave a toxic job and go and do the work of my dreams. It was painful. It was difficult. The after work was painful and difficult, but here I am. And wow, what a blessing it turned out to be. I just didn't realize it at the time. Our stone ritual, after we have gone through this, is to wash the stone and to allow it to be cleansed of all of the anger and the hurt that we have placed in it as we've clenched it, as we've whispered to it. and allow it to be the whole that it is. And to do the forgiveness, to metaphorically forgive all things as we forgive the rock. And our final step is renewing or releasing the relationship. And here the Tutu's right, the preference is always to renew unless there is a question of safety. And I add to that, as I said, I prefer not to renew the relationship with the person that I was in a trauma with. I've released that relationship because I don't trust her. And I don't need that kind of energy around me. If you are in a place where you are renewing the relationship, ask for what you need from the perpetrator in order to renew or release the relationship. This gets into the work of restorative justice, and I don't have time to go into that at length. But there are stories in the book, those of you who have read it will nod along here, of people who have had an incredible experience. There, in one case, the daughter of someone who was killed by a driver came to a space where they were able to talk to each other. They were able to work through the relationship and use it to the benefit of more. You may need an apology, an explanation, a tangible object, or never see that person again. Figure out what it is that needs to be done or not done to heal you, to help you with that part. Look for your part in any conflict. It's never one-sided. You may say, oh, but I was just the victim. Yes, and it's an opportunity to look at yourself and see what's there. When you renew a relationship, it is stronger for what you have been through, but it is always different. As one of my friends says, true dat. By renewing or releasing a relationship, you free yourself from victimhood and trauma. I felt very sorry for myself when I left my last job. It was a job I had expected to be in until retirement. And I felt very lost because I wasn't sure what was going to be next at the time. Now, 5 years later, almost, I am so grateful for the last 5 years as I have worked through that and found my true place and my true calling. So in the book, they talk about renewing or releasing the stone. So you can choose whether you release the stone or you keep it and make it something beautiful to add to your life. So nothing is wasted in this. We take the time to explore that. So next week, we are going to talk about the third part of the book, which is what happens next after you have done this work. And the section is called Everything Can Be Forgiven, even those things that feel like they can't. So let us take a moment. I'm going to give a little shoulder wiggle because it is our time of meditation. It is our time to come together. If you wish to close your eyes, please feel free to do so. It's not required. Whatever is comfortable for you. And breathing into the space where we feel the oneness. That part of our body that feels that eternal universal connection. That part of us that knows that we are connected to those that we have chosen not to renew a relationship with, that we have released the relationship, that feels the connection to those who are no longer on this planet. And we need to process whether to renew or release those aspects of the relationship. Coming into a place of healing, coming into a place where we speak our truth, where we tell the facts, where we name our hurt, where we name our vulnerability and acknowledge it, where we come into a space of saying, yes, I will release this. Yes, I will release that which no longer serves in this relationship and renew the relationship into a different form. Or yes, I am willing to release this relationship and everything that has harmed me. And sometimes we don't know which way is the right path, but we acknowledge the inner wisdom that guides us through this process. We acknowledge that there is a bigger picture than what we can see. And we give thanks for our part in it. We forgive ourselves for all harm that we have caused, intentionally or not. We forgive ourselves for thoughts or feelings that we might have taken in that no longer serve. And be gentle with ourselves as we move through this path. And as we take some time in the silence to feel and to understand the relationships that we have been through, to hold in light and love the names in the chat, the names in the prayer box, the names at Silent Unity, and indeed all silent unities and all prayer boxes everywhere. In the silence, we know our oneness. And as we come back into this space, into whatever room we're in, into whatever province we're in, whatever territory we sit on, we breathe into the knowledge that we can go forward and choose a new path, one in which we do not amplify the cycle of revenge, but rather we make the conscious choice to heal. And in this, we let the truth in us stand for itself. And so it is, and so it shall be. Amen.